6 months after she left, the room had been repainted, not because anyone decided the color needed changing, because the color that was there before had been chosen with her input, not officially, not in any documented way, simply in the ordinary way that two people who share a space accumulate small decisions together until the space carries both of them in every detail. Someone noticed this after she was gone. Someone made a quiet decision. The painters came on a Tuesday when the floor was empty. Nobody discussed it. Nobody discussed most of the changes that happened in those 6 months. They happened the way adjustments happen when the people making them understand that what they are adjusting away from is something that should not be named, that naming it would make it more present rather than less, that the practical erasure of small traces is easier than the conversation about why the erasure is necessary. The room was repainted, her particular choice of color was gone. 4 months after she left, his schedule changed, not dramatically, not in a way that produced questions from the people managing it, not in a way that required explanation. Small shifts, certain times of day that had previously been protected, kept clear of obligations in the way that certain times get protected, when there is a reason for the protection that does not need to be. Stated were no longer protected. They were filled, quickly, efficiently, with the specific speed of someone who understands that empty time is dangerous when what the empty time used to contain is no longer there to contain it. The people who managed the schedule made the adjustments without comment. One of them noticed what the adjustments meant. They said nothing. 3 months after she left, someone found a photograph, not the ones that had been removed from public platforms, a different one, smaller, personal, the kind that exists in physical form rather than digital, that was discovered during the reorganization of a space that had not been reorganized in years. A physical photograph in a physical space, found by someone who was not looking for it and who understood immediately upon finding it what it was and what finding it meant. They held it for a moment, then they did what the moment required. They placed it face down. They continued with the reorganization. They did not mention it to anyone. 6 weeks after she left, he asked about her once. Not directly. He has never been someone who asks things directly when the asking would require him to acknowledge what the asking reveals about him. Indirectly, to a question that was technically about something else, but that contained within it, for anyone paying sufficient attention, the actual question. One person was paying sufficient attention. They answered the technical question. They did not address the actual one. He did not ask again. 2 weeks after she left, the people closest to him compared notes for the first time. Not in any formal way. Not a meeting, not a conversation that was initiated with the explicit purpose of discussing what they had each observed. It happened the way these things happen, through the gradual accumulation of small moments where one person said something to another person and the other person recognized what was being said because they had seen something similar. Recognition produced a conversation that neither of them had planned to have. What they found when they compared notes surprised them, not what had happened after she left, what had happened before. Each of them, separately, across the months before the leaving, had noticed something, small things, individually attributable to ordinary variation, to mood, to pressure, to the natural fluctuation of someone living a life with as many demands as his, but together, placed next to each other in the conversation they were having. 2 weeks after she was gone, the small things formed the pattern. The pattern had a shape. The shape was she had already left before she left. None of them had seen it while it was happening. 1 week after she left, he was in a meeting that ran long. Midway through it, at a point where the conversation had reached a natural pause and the people in the room were collecting themselves before continuing, he looked at his phone, not in the distracted way of someone managing multiple demands simultaneously, in the specific way of someone who is checking for something they know would not be there, and are checking anyway because the checking has become a reflex that the knowledge has not yet succeeded in breaking. Nothing was there. He put the phone down. The meeting continued. Nobody in the room mentioned what they had seen the day she left. She left in the morning. Not dramatically. No visible weight to the departure. No ceremony of ending. Nothing that announced to anyone observing that what was happening was permanent rather than ordinary. She moved through the departure with the specific quality that people who have made a complete internal decision bring to the external execution of it. Calm, efficient, present in the practical details without being emotionally present in the meaning of them. One person saw her leave. They said, "You will come back." Not as a question. She looked at them for a moment. She did not answer. She left. 3 weeks before she left, she stopped making plans. Not all plans, the ones that belonged to obligations, to the shared structure of the life she was still technically inside. Those she continued to make and keep with the same reliability she had always brought to them. But the other kind, the personal kind, the plans that are made not because they are required, but because you are invested in a future that you expect to be present for. She stopped making those. The person closest to her noticed this before anyone else. They thought about asking. They did not ask. 2 months before she left, she called her sister 3 times in 1 week. This was unusual, not the calling they spoke regularly, but the frequency and the length. The calls ran long in the way that calls run long when the person making them has something they are working towards saying and have not yet found the form for saying it. The sister asked on the third call, "Are you all right?" She said, "I am trying to figure something out." The sister asked, "What?" She said, "Whether something is what it feels like, or whether I am wrong about what it feels like." The sister did not understand fully what was being said. She said, "And what does it feel like?" Long pause. She said, "Finished." The sister said nothing. The call continued for another 40 minutes and did not return to that word. But the sister heard it. Finished. 4 months before she left. She was at an event, photographed, positioned correctly, present in every technical sense, doing the things that presence requires. The conversations, the movements through the room, the management of herself in the space that such spaces require. Someone who knew her watched her from across the room. They watched her for a long time. Then they said to the person standing next to them, not thinking, simply saying what the watching had produced, "She is not here." The person next to them looked across the room. They saw her, standing, present, functioning completely. They said, "What do you mean?" "She is right there." The person who had been watching said nothing further. But they were right. She was right there. And she was already gone. The beginning, there was a moment, specific, unremarkable, not identified as significant by anyone present, including her, where something shifted. Not a dramatic shift. Not the kind that produces a visible response or a named emotion or a conversation about what just happened. The quiet kind. The internal kind. The kind that happens in a single second and changes nothing visible and everything underneath. She was in a room with him. He was elsewhere in the room, in the way he was sometimes elsewhere, present physically, distributed mentally across the many things that his life required his mind to be distributed across simultaneously. She looked at him for a long time. He did not notice. And something that had been pointing in one direction quietly, without drama, without announcement, without giving anyone, including herself, sufficient warning to respond to what was happening, turned. Nobody noticed. Nobody was supposed to notice. That was the moment she left. Everything after was just the body catching up,